you, Prabhu. So,
Says it's being live streamed.
yes, yes. So it's just such a great pleasure to have you and to know like that you served in Chicago. And so the whole idea of this, all these interviews, um, not just yours, but a few other devotees, is to be able to capture some of the history because I just feel like much of it would be lost in the sands of time if this
Uh-huh.
was not preserved. And
Surely.
I feel this is very, very important because, these sacrifices that Srila Prabhupada made and the disciples of Srila Prabhupada made ha- is what gave us what we have today. All the temples, all the books, and so many devotees. And it's their purity that is still keeping everything going. And so it's very important to understand the significance of not just doing things, but the mood behind doing everything for Krishna's pleasure, and and how Srila Prabhupada would have liked us to do things, and to hear from all of you who were directly engaged by Srila Prabhupada to spread Krishna consciousness. And although we complain that we don't have this, we don't have that, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, somehow by Srila Prabhupada's potency, all of you were able to overcome those obstacles and become instrument in Krishna's hands. So that's one of the reasons, like, why I feel it's and not just me, but several other devotees feel that it's important to preserve the history of Chicago.
Yeah, it
And
shows right there.
yeah, so please tell us, Prabhu, like I I learned from you that you were sent by Bhagwan
Hmm.
as Prabhu.
Yeah. Um, I only remember certain details. Uh, Bhagavan had Ladini and I to go to the temple on Halsted and Fullerton. It was just like an apartment. It had 2 stories. I guess our bedrooms were upstairs. And when we got there, uh, it was in the wintertime. And halfway up the stairs, there was a window, and the window was gone. And there was no plastic over it or anything. I don't know why it wasn't covered with plastic or why we didn't do anything about it. But that wind, um, in Chicago, they call it the hawk. Well, you live in Chicago, you probably know that hawk had no mercy on us. I mean, and we didn't have heat. I guess we couldn't afford to buy the gas for the stove, or probably we had some heater or something. Our only heat was a little fireplace, just a regular fireplace. And Ladini, my blessed wife, she was the pujari and the cook. And she had to cook all the meals, the entire meals on that fireplace. And I was thinking about that the other day. How in the world did she cook? Like, she, there were only about 4 or 5 of us there. There weren't very many because I remember sitting around Pashadam, and there was only a small group of us. And Ladini we had deities, Lord Jagannath deities, small. And Ladini would make, uh, she was so much devoted to Lord Jagannath. Um, she would cook these very opulent meals for the deities, three, at least 3 times a day. And we would all be served out just Mahaprasadam. She didn't make anything else. So we had to eat Maha every meal. Um, that actually became a problem uh, for myself, and I know I'm sure for them too. After a while, honestly, after eating such sweet and delicious this and that for every day, we started getting real goofy at meal times. We would joke and we actually would roll around the floor and laugh and be really. And I was really thinking, Maya this is really dangerous. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and it's funny how spiritual things, how there's no time involved. So even though this was 54 years ago, I can remember it like it was yesterday, you know, because it's spiritual things are like timeless. So I wrote Srila Prabhupada, and I said, my dear Srila Prabhupada, um, I'm having a real problem with Prashadam. And I explained to him this situation. I said, if you will just tell me how to eat, what to do, I'll just simply follow that. Like everything else I do, I just follow your instructions. Everybody was like that in those days, Prabhu. Everyone was, it was always, what would Prabhupada say? And everyone was so sincere. They wanted to please Prabhupada. Everybody did. You know, he was our main focus. And I wrote him and said, you just tell me what to do, and I'll just do that like everything else. So soon I got a letter back from Srila Prabhupada, and he said, my dear Mahananda, please accept my blessings. This is what I want you to do. I want you to first decide how much you can eat, and then eat half of that. And then fill your belly 1/4 full of air, water, and leave the rest for air. He said that will make for good digestion, and I want you to follow that. That'll please me very much. Your ever well wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. There might have been a little more in the letter, but that was the essence. So I was really in a dilemma, Prabhu. I tried, but you know how we joined Krishna consciousness on September 14th, 1969, and moved in the temple that day. And for 5 months maybe, then we were initiated in maybe March of 70. So that letter from Srila Prabhupada that we saw printed, it said it was 1970, and it was to us in Chicago, to Ladini in Chicago. So, so we were very new devotees. So I don't know if it's still that way. Probably people are people. Because we gave up everything else in the material world, all our physical enjoyments and nonsense and TVs, and there was one opportunity we could use our senses, and that was with prasadam, you know. So I was particularly passionate in the material world, in a sense, really. Maybe I wasn't that passionate, but I took everything out on prasadam. So I was really in a real dilemma because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what Prabhupada said. And I didn't know what to do. So I heard that Rupanuga was in Detroit, and he was heading to New York City to see Srila Prabhupada. So I went to, right away, I went to Detroit and asked Rupanuga, could I hitch a ride in the back of his van? So off we went to New York to see Prabhupada. It's okay I talk about this because it's not exactly about Chicago, you know, even though in a sense it is.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
So I'll try to be brief. So when we got to New York City, I tried to see Srila Prabhupada. and his overprotective servants wouldn't let me in. I was, even then, I was a nobody. You know, I'm still a nobody. So they said, no, you can't see Srila Prabhupada. So Krishna gave me the intelligence. Here's an idea for you. Um, get a piece of paper and write a letter to Srila Prabhupada, fold it up, stick in an envelope and seal it and slide it under his door. So I left, went down to the temple room and was very sad. All of a sudden I heard, Mahananda, Mahananda, Prabhupada wants to see you in his room right away. So they marched me up, pushed me in his room, and I was really frozen. I didn't know what to do because back then we served Prabhupada in separation. That was apparently, the scriptures say that's more powerful than actually being with him, you know what I mean? So that was our relationship with Prabhupada. So I started stuttering and trying to get Prabhupada to get on the mental plane and um, talk with me, you know, help me to understand what to do. And I only remember him saying two things, and actually it was the same thing both times. He said, you cannot incur sin by eating prasadam. And then a few minutes later, he said it again, you cannot incur sin by eating prasadam. So I remember that like it was 5 minutes ago. So I guess I just kept stumbling around. Finally, Srila Prabhupada looked at me and he said, I can hear him. I can hear him say it. Arti's going on? I said, yes, Prabhupada, Arti's going on. I said innocently. And he said, simply go to Arti. I just offered my obeisances and thought, whoa. So I went to Arti. And years later, I thought, well, that was the lesson. Anytime I get on the mental plane, I just do some simple devotional service. I just go to Arti or something, you know what I mean? So uh, I sort of made that up, but you know, that's what I got from all that.
Mm.
So there was one other thing that happened that morning. Maybe should I take a minute and talk about it?
Yes, yes,
Um,
please. Yes, share
we,
more about your interactions with Prabhupada.
okay, Prabhupada did class, and this is so wonderful, Prabhu. I mean, I am so fortunate. Um, Prabhupada, after he gave class, he came out into the hallway at Henry Street in New York, in whatever that section is of New York. Um, and he's walking down the hall, and everybody's flat up against the wall, pressing against the wall, trying to make room for him to walk through. And just as he got close to me, I was thinking, oh my God, this is probably the only opportunity in my life. And I tried to stop myself, but I threw myself on the ground in front of him and I wrapped my arms completely around his feet and rested my head on his toes. I remember having the thought that they were just going to pick me up and chuck me out the window or something terrible. But I didn't care. I was willing to take the risk. I couldn't stop anyway. I couldn't help myself. So surprisingly, Prabhupada just stood there for the longest time. And nobody said a word. Everybody froze. And, you know, today I consider that the highlight of my life. You know what I mean? That moment. I'm sure that blesses me. You know, maybe all my blessings are from that moment, you know, of being able to actually get the dust of the actual lotus feet of someone so exalted as Srila Prabhupada.
Mm.
So then I got back in the van and softly chanted and headed back to Chicago. I guess we stopped in Detroit. I don't know how I got to Chicago, but I went back to Chicago.
Mm.
And Oh, I don't remember any specific instances from that era, except we went on Saptuga a lot, and we rolled around on the floor at Prashadam time and ate very sweet and authentic food every day. Uh, I do remember one thing that happened that I would really like to know. Um, we were out on Sankirtan one day, and Rudra, well, he was our temple president. You saw there were Bhagavan, he sent Rudra and his wife Radhika to Chicago to open the temple. And
Yes.
I don't know what Rudra was thinking, but he was leading kirtan out on the street, and all of a sudden he stopped chanting, threw up his arms, looked up in the sky, like, you know, I don't know what he was thinking. And he just walked off. And
Mm.
I've never seen him ever again in my life. We never saw him again. I don't know what happened to him. If anybody knows Rudra or knows anything about him, I'd really like to hear about it because that's always been a question in my mind, you know,
Mm.
of course. I don't mean to mention anything bad about Rudra. He was a great soul. He had given his life to serve Prabhupada. His wife Radhika was a great soul too. But other than that, Prabhu, um, I can't I can't think of anything specific that went on in Chicago. We just went out daily on Sankirtan. We went a lot. Back in the old days, we didn't just do Sankirtan like an hour on Friday or something. We went out every morning, all morning, and especially in Detroit, I'm thinking.
Mm.
Then we would come home for lunch and then quickly go back out all afternoon and every day of the week, maybe not Sunday.
Mm.
And I can, devotees today who don't have the opportunity to go on Sankirtan like that often, um, they're really missing an opportunity to experience what we experienced back then. Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya, he, I mean, that's our life and soul.
Mm.
And I remember when it was time to go, always you didn't really want to go. It was too much trouble to give up your comfort of hanging out in that temple and having to go out and be on the streets and deal with people.
Mm.
But always after you've been out there for some hours, I always had the feeling that, oh my God, and you really felt like it was your life and soul. You no longer wanted to go back to the temple and go back to your material life. I mean, not that your temple life is material life, but you had to deal with people. You had to think about things related to your body and stuff like that. But when you were out there, sometimes we had the chance. We'd have hundreds of students around us, and we'd be preaching to them and repeating what we remembered Prabhupada saying, and we would really feel the mood of Sankirtan, uh, and as you walk back to the temple, you gradually got back into your bodily space of what I have to do when I get back there, and how I have to take, things like that. So I had that experience. I hope it was okay. I shared that, and
Yes,
I
of
don't.
course, Prabhu.
Yes, it was.
It's we want to hear more from you.
Well, about Chicago, soon they went to, what was it, Evanston and
Yes.
Evanston Temple. I don't think Ladini and you
But
remember what?
before, I heard that um, the temple on Halsted was closed because I heard Bhagawan Prabhu, he wanted to centralize all the zones. So most of the temples were closed and everybody moved to where he was
Wow,
until.
I don't mean to criticize Bhagavan because he was my very dear friend
Mhm.
and he was such a powerful devotee. We made more devotees in Detroit than I think anybody has in a short period of time.
Yeah,
So many people joined. I remember one day we went downtown and we would march up and down uh, Woodward Avenue by Macy's, by Nathan's Hot Dogs, and we would chant the holy name with all our hearts. I remember when we would get to a corner and had to cross a street, I remember looking down the street and seeing the people all the way at the end of the block and trying so hard to project my voice as far as I could so that more people would be able to be blessed by hearing that transcendental sound. You know, I was thinking the other day, without the mercy of devotees, nobody's got a chance. No living entity has a chance in this world. You know, so Prabhupada's mercy
mm,
that we have carried on for Srila Prabhupada of trying to go out and let that holy name be heard. That's those people's only chance, you know.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
and Ladini was there. She'd be passing out literature. Um, it was a lot different back then, of
Yeah.
course, in so many
How
ways.
how old were you when you came across devotees and you came to Krishna
Around 20,
consciousness?
22 maybe or something. It was 1969. I, I was 24. I was born in 45. I'll be 80 years old in 2 years. And September 14th, it'll be 54 years since I joined Srila Prabhupada.
Mm. So how
And
did you make the devotees?
oh, golly. You want me to tell you?
Yes.
Um, uh,
Were you
you know,
married before
oh,
were you
yes.
married
Oh,
before
yes.
you met the devotees?
We were already married. She, on graduation night, she came into my apartment uh, to buy something, you know, that we weren't supposed to do back then. And when she walked in the door, I saw her and I instantly felt um, like she was somebody that I knew that I was, you know, I don't know what to say the feeling was, but I was instantly, uh, I had to make her acquaintance and make plans in the future to meet with her. So anyway, we were living together and we had never heard of Krishna ever.
Mm,
Never heard a devotee, never heard Hare Krishna. When we joined, there were only 11 temples. So, you know, that was kind of like the early days.
mm,
Um, so uh, I was, um, I was sort of a big impersonal preacher back then. I remember talking on the phone with my friends, talking to them about living entities being one energy and God being another energy and how, you know, I don't remember all the details. It's probably good I don't. But I got this book called The Wisdom of God.
mm,
And a couple of years ago, I found another copy of it and I saw it was actually the condensed version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 12th canto,
mm,
written by a Swami called Prabhuvananda. I, I think he was a Vaishnava, but maybe in a different sampradaya. I've
mm,
actually seen his name on the internet, so maybe referring to the past or something, I don't know. But in this book I was reading, and it said, if you want to be happy, you have to give your life to Krishna, you have to surrender.
mm,
Then you can be happy.
mm,
And these words sort of were important to me. I really thought, wow, that's really something. Who is this Krishna? So Krishna is in our heart. So he was in the background. You know, he was arranging all this. And a few days later, it must have been just a couple of days, I got in a state of mind where I was like at the edge of a big hole I was about to fall in. And I was like crying and so distressed and so um, just hurting so bad from all the frustration, all the nonsense. And suddenly I remembered those words and I prayed. I prayed so sincerely. I said, my dear Krishna, I don't know who you are and I have no idea what it means to surrender, but I give my life to you. I surrender. Please take me. I remember saying those words. And and then, that was it. I went to sleep and I forgot about it, but apparently Krishna hadn't. The next day, Ladini and I were in downtown Detroit at a street fair making leather sandals. And all of a sudden, this was the next day, I think. All of a sudden, I heard this Hare Krishna. And I thought, oh my God, Krishna. I just read about that last night. And I looked up, and here comes Bhagavan. No
Mm,
shirt, long hair, blue jeans, strumming a guitar, and
mm,
singing Hare Krishna. He
mm,
was in Detroit. Rupanuga had sent him to Detroit to to go to open a temple, but he also entered medical school at Wayne State University, where I also went taking engineering physics. But so his wife pushed a little stroller over to me at my table with her first son. I think his name was Vaishnava Das. I'm not sure, but there's a little baby in there. And she handed me a card and said, "Please come to our temple."
mm,
So I thought, sure. So the next day I had this job where you run these limbs of trees into that machine that grinds them all up. So I did that all day. And at the end of the day, I went to this address and I was peering in the window. I was real shy. And this devotee lady, her name was Sadadandini Dasi. I still
mm,
remember her name. She came out and
mm,
invited me in and pulled me in. They were just having prashadam, so they sat me down, um, handed me a plate of prashadam. I started tasting it. It was so amazing.
mm,
And they handed me a paperback Blue Macmillan Bhagavad Gita, the first one printed. Remember the paperback? So they handed me one of those, and I was looking at it, and I remember having the realization right then that this is where I belong. You know, this is
mm,
my life. And they also understood you belong here with us. So they told me to go home and get my stuff and come back here and live with us.
mm,
So I went home to tell Linda then, uh, that I had met these people and I was going to change my life. I had to go live with them and please come with me.
mm,
She, uh, she only came because I wanted to. She never even went to the temple before. She had never seen a devotee.
mm,
We filled up our car and rented a trailer and filled the back of the trailer with all our belongings. We're heading down John Lodge Freeway in Detroit, heading to the temple, not having any idea what might happen.
mm,
All of a sudden, the back doors of the trailer flew open on the interstate,
mm.
and all our belongings distributed along 2 miles of interstate.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
I'm sure it wasn't 2 miles. That's an exaggeration, but
Mm,
our fishing rods, our wedding albums, our nonsense books,
mm,
everything, everything. And I really, I was in like maybe a little shock, and I don't remember anything how we dealt with that. I
mm,
just remember we made it back to the temple. I think we just left it there. I would imagine it was all scattered and broken and everything.
mm,
And we made it back to the temple and laid our lives at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada.
mm,
And and it's that's it's been ever since, trying to lay our lives at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. I don't know where Ladini is right now. She might be with Srila Prabhupada. I don't know.
Mm.
But she was so saintly.
Mm.
A lot of people know her, and about her
Mm.
death in Africa.
Yeah.
And, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Any old timer at least will know this story. But
I think someone wrote a book about her.
yeah, called the Legacy of Love. At the time that book came out, I felt okay that they wrote the book about Ladini, but the fact was, and I've never said this, they actually plagiarized my own writings, took it from my articles and things that I've written about Ladini and I coming to Krishna consciousness and everything. I didn't mind. It was all for Krishna's benefit. So,
Mm.
but I had actually written a lot of that book. And in the book, because I left New Vrindavan not in good favor with Kirtanananda, that they called me Mike in the book, and they didn't recognize the fact that I was a devotee or anything. So that was a little painful to read that.
Mm.
But, what was I saying? Um, so everything changed immediately. We were able to give up all of our sins uh, twice. I remember I went out on the front porch at night and embraced two more times my old friend Marlboro and had two more cigarettes before I gave them up forever. And in Detroit, we were so, under Bhagavan's direction, we were so engaged in devotional service. We were real, everyone was so sincere back then. Everybody loved each other so much. When you saw a devotee, you fell down, you offered your sincere obeisances, jumped up and hugged your god brother, whom you truly loved. And, but, people talk about the old days. I've come to realize you really can't recreate the old days. We have to deal with the way things are now and try to be Krishna conscious uh, under the present circumstances, whatever's happening now. That was then and now is now. So, do you have any other questions?
Did you grow up in Detroit?
No, no. I grew up in Miami. I was born in Washington, D.C., and when I was 3, I moved to Miami. My mother divorced my father, and we moved to Miami. But I had a real troubling. My mother had electric shock treatment all the time, and my stepfather, he was a complete alcoholic every day. He got drunk. So I wouldn't go home. I remember not going home until after midnight. Everyone was sleeping. When I walked in the house, I could smell the whole house was filled with his alcohol breath. So
Mm.
it was very difficult. I actually I failed the eighth grade three times. I had F's in every report card um, until my grandmother came and saved me and
Mm-hmm.
took me to Georgia Military Academy in Atlanta, and then I
Mm.
started improving.
Mm.
Actually, in my 11th year, I actually made it to the top score of the 1 6-week period. They had a list of the top 10 students, and I
Mm-hmm.
really started to apply myself, and it was really something that I thought was really amazing that I got on that list and I gradually were in one of the 6 weeks period. I actually was number one in the entire school. So, it
Mm.
didn't matter. I failed the eighth grade 3 years. You know.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
then, um,
How did you meet your wife? And when did you move to Detroit?
well, I was living in um, Dalton, Georgia, and one of the teachers who was in our dormitory, he, no, this was in Rome, Georgia, Mount Berry School for Boys. He was, he had stolen these two antique candelabras from the college that was associated with my agricultural school. And some of his students, he bragged about how he stole these expensive candelabras. So when they graduated and went to that college, they talked to their teachers and the authorities there and told them, hey, there's this teacher over there that stole your this and that. So he and I used to, or he used to collect all the money at the ball games. He would sell the tickets, and I was there when the police came to arrest him. So maybe, I don't know what happened, but I took off with him. We went to Detroit so he could escape
Mm.
the law. So I
Mm.
ended up in Detroit just because that was where he was from.
Oh,
And
I see.
yeah,
Mm.
and
Mm. Mm.
um, I guess that's how I got to Detroit.
Yeah, yeah. It's wonderful to listen to you, Prabhu. Like so many details and um in each devotee's life and how they connect with Krishna is very amazing.
Well, Prabhupada, he wanted us to write not only our realizations, he wanted us
Mhm.
to write our experiences and how we joined. So
Yeah.
I'm always a little embarrassed to talk about myself or write about myself, but
Mm.
it's really not about me. It's about Krishna. It's about doing my
Right,
duty to Krishna. And if it helps others
right,
to
right.
inspire them, you know, I've
Yes,
got this group, my group on Facebook called,
yes.
yeah, Prabhu in the last, I think they had me on shadow ban because one time some boy said, a devotee said, I want to marry such and such, and he mentioned a female. And I
Mm.
wrote back to him, I said, well, why don't you do what Krishna did? Just go in to the midst, like he did with Rukmini. All the other warriors, great Maharathas, were all falling off their horses and everything. And he grabbed Rukmini, who was only 14 years old at the time,
Mm.
and he took her away and married her.
Mm.
Um, I said, why don't you do that? This kidnapper. I wasn't really being serious. I was just using it as an excuse to speak something, bring up Krishna.
Mhm.
So uh, Facebook suspended me for I don't remember how long. And that was a while back. And when they let me back in, there's something called shadow bans, people have told me,
Uh-huh.
where you're part of it, but they've kind of like cut your exposure down
Oh, I
because
see.
at the time I had like 30,000, over 30,000 devotees who had joined.
Mm.
But suddenly everything just got slower and slower
Mm.
and dropped down to like 26,000. And
Mm.
I was worried. I thought, oh my God, what's happening? But I
Mm.
think really they just took away that shadow banning because Prabhu, um, I think I had like 1,000 devotees join in the last 3 weeks, maybe.
Mm.
I mean, even today, I put a welcome for 271 devotees who have joined in the last 48 hours.
Mm.
So it's like going viral again. It's really amazing. It's
Mm.
called Hearing
Mm.
Short Lectures by Srila Prabhupada. If anybody wants to join us, it would be
Mm.
nice.
Mm. Mm. So,
Uh,
Prabhu, after leaving Chicago, where did you go?
I don't know. I know. I think I probably went to Washington D.C.
Mm.
They were having a lot of
Were you
trouble there.
called there for service?
Pardon?
Were you called for service in Washington, D.C.?
I went there to join the temple to help them. Did you ask me, did I do what service?
Yes, did they invite you to Washington, D.C. to do
No,
service?
one sent me. I'm really
Okay.
surprised that he wanted to centralize everything because, Prabhupada, he was really opposed to any centralization. He wanted
Mm.
every he wanted every temple to be independent. He didn't
Mm.
want it.
So,
He didn't.
so what I heard, and this is based off Sri Govinda Prabhu's interview with another devotee. So he said that they closed it. There were two temples in Detroit which were closed, and there was a temple in Chicago that was closed, and everybody went there. Um, I don't remember the place, if it was Detroit or some other place, Cleveland, or not sure which place. And then they went back and again opened a temple in Chicago, and that
I,
was when Shri Kishore Kishori um, were sent to Chicago
I see.
from India. Yeah.
I see. That's
So
interesting.
there was a short period of time like when there was no temple.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. So, what happened in Washington when Ladini and I got there? Mongol Arcty was like at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That so um,
No, no, I ain't gonna say that. Go ahead and do what you're doing. I just want to get curious.
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted there. What
Mm-hmm.
was I saying?
You were saying Mangal Aarti was at 10 o'clock.
Oh, all right. So after a few days, I thought I'd write to Srila Prabhupada and ask him
Mm-hmm.
what to do. So I
Mm-hmm.
wrote to Prabhupada and explained the situation, and he wrote me back. And I couldn't believe the letter he wrote me, Prabhu. I'm not making this up. I don't have the letter anymore. But he said, "My dear Mahananda, please accept my blessings. If you are having any difficulty, then come here at once and live with me in Los Angeles. Then after you've been here for some time and get a little fixed up, you can go and open a center for me. And that will please me very much. Your ever well wisher, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami." He never mentioned anything about anyone else. You know,
Mm.
he just was concerned if I was having any difficulty, what I should do. I should come there and be with him. Consequently, I did, and I went back to be with Bhagavan in Detroit. I don't know how my life would have changed. Ladini went to LA
Mm.
and he was trained by Shilavati uh,
Mm.
to be Pujari
Mm.
and then came back. But
Mm. So did you go back to Chicago, or was it just a few months that you spent in Chicago?
yes, I wasn't there maybe less than 6 months, maybe just however time it was until that Halstead temple closed. And they went to that Evanston, is it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
So Shri Kishore Kishori, they came in 73. So so I think all this must have happened somewhere between 70 and 72, right?
I, yeah, because of that letter from Prabhupada to her was in 70. So
Right.
we were there in Chicago,
Yeah.
and I was initiated in that same year early.
So you were initiated in Chicago or in Detroit? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Mahananda, Prabhu.